Hello folks, this is Coach Julie Albert and this is my final presentation for Kine 516. I'm going to be talking about integrating athletes with a disability. So quick little overview of what I'm going to be talking about and how this all fits in with our leadership class. First, I'm going to be doing a quick introduction, and then we're going to be talking about creating a new sport opportunity spectrum, improving the Paralympic pathway, more in detail looking at the SPLIS model, empowering athletes with a disability, integrating into the Norwegian sports system and the lessons learned from that, and effects of integrated sport participation. Conclusion and recommendations on integrating athletes with a disability. So as an introduction, as most of you know, I'm a para-athletics coach. So for me, integration has always been a big part, and I'm personally coaching in a club that's fully integrated, so meaning we're open for athletes with physical and intellectual disabilities. For this presentation or this project, I really focused on the high performance side of things. Because this is what we're studying. So most of the research that I looked at was based on high performance, but of course we also have to look at the participation level as well, because in my mind it goes hand in hand. This pyramid here kind of shows us that a person with a disability and an able-bodied individuals, they're kind of going through the similar steps from a development part of it to get up there, and the trick really is to make who is going to make it up to an international success, and how are we going to get them. So my review, I wanted to gather some more scientific evidence on what works and how should integration look like, and what are some of the factors we have to look at. And I also wanted to look at some different countries at how integration works there, which I had a really good, I found a really good paper on the review. So by the way, I did not find any research on athletics clubs specific in terms of integration. So I used some, most of the papers were based on sports clubs and from different sports. So the main goal and that we actually want to go to, that I want to talk about, came from an article Fay et al. In 2009 that explained the way of creating a new sport opportunity spectrum. So really increasing the multiculturalism of our organizations and making our organization more inclusive, not just in terms of ability, but also gender, race, and religion, for example. So if you look at this here, where we have on the far left side, we're going from a monoculture, more of an exclusive club, into a multicultural, more inclusive organization where actually diversity is valued. So we're valuing diversity in a club and in a society. And I believe that's or what this paper stated, that would then create a lot more opportunities for everybody. So I looked at, most of you are familiar with the long-term athlete development pathway, and there's one that's more specific to Paralympic athletes, and this one here is this LTAD is actually from the Wheelchair Basketball Association. And you can see here on the left side we have a competition stream, on the right side is a participation stream, and that's the participation stream. There's a lot of stuff going on, but basically what we want to look at, since I'm focusing on the high performance side of things, is the blue arrows on the left. So a lot of the development goes through clubs and provincials, and then there's some that comes through the participation, which at the moment is more of a segregated, so more of the disability sport organizations would take on the participation. But nevertheless, there are some athletes that will come over from the participation and end up in the competition side. So another way of looking at a model from a national perspective is the SPLIS model, and this was developed by De Bosch et al. Out of Belgium. And it really, what it shows is what does it take to do international, get to international success, and really making sure that we're hitting all those pillars. So they came up with 9 pillars. Pillar one being financial support, of course. Medals cost money. So there needs to be some support from a finance side of it. The pillar two was organization and structure of sport policies. So we recognized, or they recognized, Bosch et al. Recognized that it starts at the top where policies have to be inclusive. They have to be able to so that we're able to integrate athletes and making clubs more inclusive, because those policies will then be enforced in the clubs. And it will also be a guidance in order to for provincial organization and club organization to know how to better integrate athletes. The pillar three is foundation and participation. Just as we said, we need lots of athletes to get into sports, and especially on the para side, that first awareness and first contact is really important, and building a good base of participants. So we know not everybody's going to make it to that international success, but if we don't have that base of participants, it's not going to happen. Pillar four is talent identification and development system. So really figuring out how can we identify those talents and how can we then develop them as well. It's not just identifying, but also showing them the right pathways and creating an environment so that they can become the best they can be. Pillar five, athletic post-career support. So having support beyond the sports involvement, and what's going to be after that, 10 years of high performance sports, so that we can make it attractive for athletes to actually get involved into high performance sports, and we're not just dropping them once they're done with their athletic career. Pillar six is training facilities. Pillar seven is coaching provision, coach development. So as we all know, it is very important that we keep on educating our coaches, and especially on the Paralympic side, there is so much coaching potential, but coaches have not been educated on the Paralympic or the disability specific side of things. Pillar 8 is international and national competition, especially for Paralympic athletes. Often we have small fields in national competitions, so in order to get to that next level of competition, we need to have our athletes travel internationally and compete against the best of the world in order to see what needs to be done to get and catch them up. Scientific research, I think there's lots going on the Olympic side and the Paralympic side, but there's always more that we can research and have scientific evidence, so that we as coaches and programs and clubs and national sport organization can make evidence-based decisions. So another study that I was looking at is a study by Sørensen, 2002, Sørensen et al., and they're out of Norway, and they're actually looked at the empowering athletes with a disability model. What are some of the factors that are playing into creating an environment for an athlete with a disability to really empower them to become the best they can be? Because I believe that's what we got to do as coaches, as sport programs, is empowering people. And when it comes to athletes with a disability, there's some extra factors that just play into this. So it can, so on the left side we see some moderators, so the age of onset of disability, type of disability, gender, and then on what level, different levels that things are happening on an individual level, group level, societal. And then on the right side we have the mediators, cultural context, what's their cultural background, political efficacy. So that meaning more like what are the politics within the club, within the provincial organization, how is communication there, motivational climate. Are we providing a motivational climate to this athlete to come out and strive to become better? Or is this a climate that is not motivating and doesn't help them to get to the place where they would like or to the best they can be. Group identity. Can an athlete identify themselves with other athletes within this group? So one of the things with disability sport organizations right now is one of the good things about those is that athletes can identify with other athletes who have the same disability. Okay, within an integrated program, I think what we're striving to do is that athletes can identify with somebody else who has the same sport. So we're want to get away from the disability focus onto the sport focus. So a track athlete is a track athlete, a thrower is a thrower, rather than having a person with a spinal cord injury and an able body. Collective efficacy, goal orientation, identity, and of course self-esteem. So Sorensen et al. Started off with this first study and they looked at the empowerment. So then they said, let's go out into our system and in 2006 in our Norwegian sports system and explore what are some of those, what are some of the factors, or how does integration work, and does it work or does it not work, and what are some of the barriers and what are some of the good things that came out of it. I just put down how the kind of the Norwegian, in figure 1 you can see how the Norwegian system is built up. It's kind of a top down. We have the Norwegian Olympic Committee that oversees district association and the sports federation on the national level, regional level the specific sport association on the regional level, and then we have on a local level the sports clubs. Okay. So what their conclusion out of that study was really that integration can help improve an athlete's performance. So what they saw was that athletes who were integrated within a mainstream on an able body club structures generally were at a higher performance level than athletes who were within a disability or a segregated club. So we know we have the data from that study that clearly shows that we have a significant difference in performance improvement. They also said that one of the main factors was that we need to address individual needs of the athletes. So for an athlete with a disability, they might have some transportation issues, or they might have, of course, some equipment needs that an able body wouldn't have. So on an individual base, things have to be addressed and accommodated for and adapted. Integration happens at the club level. It starts at the national level with the support of the provincial level. So meaning that it really happens in the community on the club level. The coaches who are coaching in the community, those are the ones who are making it happening. The provincial level or the district level in Norway, those were a support for those clubs. So they weren't really running any of the programs. They might be putting on some competitions, but they're not running any programs. They made sure that the competitions are integrated. They made sure that the coaches in the club levels got the coach education around disability. On a national level, we really saw that there was the policy. Those guys are the policy makers. They focused mainly on the very, very top performance athletes and would take those to Paralympics and whatnot. So kind of similar system as we have in Canada right now. Another thing was that extra funding is necessary for better integration. Integration is going to cost us some money. And they are, through the Norwegian system, they were extra funding through the Paralympic Committee that they would receive for clubs to better integrate athletes with a disability. So that was recognized that there needs to be financial support. And just as we saw in the SPLIS diagram, financial support is our pillar 1. That's just, medals are going to cost us some money. Integration is not always the best option for an athlete, and it should be up to the athlete to choose if they want to participate in an integrated or segregated program. So forcing athletes onto the able body system is not the way to go. They found that it always worked the best if an athlete was free to choose, because some athletes might still feel more comfortable being within a disability sport program, being surrounded by others with the same disability. So ideally, in order to really increase that sport opportunity spectrum, what we need to create is a choice. So we want to have athletes to have the choice of going participating in the sports that they want to, but not being restricted to one or the other. So here are some recommendations after doing this quick review here that I would give to our national or to our clubs and provincial and national organizations in order to become more integrated. So in my opinion, national sport organizations need to implement policies to support the integration of athletes with a disability. And I think some national athletics Canada has somewhere a policy, but there's still a lot of unclarity around selection criteria, but also around how a club really, it's not really mandated to any club to offer para-specific events. It's not really mandated to the coaches to take disability modules, for example, in order to be coaching as an athletics coach. So I would really like to see from the national organization to put some more pressure on provincial and clubs to become more integrated and inclusive. Disability-specific education for coaches and officials is necessary in order for a program to become integrated. So what I mean with this is really giving the coaches the education so that they are not as afraid taking on a new athlete or taking on an athlete with a disability and creating this environment of empowerment. But we got to give them the tools. We can't just say, well, now you're going to be an integrated club and you're just going to take these guys. Well, it's a bit like telling the athletes that's what they have to do. We can't just tell clubs what they have to do. We got to give them the right tools so that it's their choice and they're wanting to do so. They're motivated to take on athletes with a disability. A sport inclusion consultant should be available for provincial and community organizations. One of the things that really stuck out to me in the Norwegian study was that they had these district community or inclusion consultant. So they really helped those clubs with their activities. They helped them with accessibility. They helped them around coach education. All those things that were disability specific was done by this consultant and would come into clubs and really help them along and check in with them and support them throughout the process of integration. And I really like that idea of having somebody there. So I think that would be a great way for our country to start hiring these inclusion consultants who could help sport clubs to become more integrated. So this is about it for my presentation. Again, this is really on the theme of inclusion. And just as we talked in some of our classes, creating a motivational environment and creating an inclusive environment that would really empower our athletes to become the best they can be. I also believe that having a more inclusive club is not only beneficial for the athletes with a disability, but also for the able-bodied athletes who really get to know athletes with a disability, and it can really change the whole societal outlook and make sport a tool to societal change and accepting people with a disability and recognizing their abilities of what they can do and how hard they work, and see how high their performance can be. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and we'll talk soon.